Right. So the major site of the microbiota that I have not yet given adequate attention is the human vagina. And the vaginal microbiota have a very important role, and they are somewhat well understood and somewhat mysterious at the same time. So let's look into it. So first, understand that the bacteria growing in the vaginal mucus are controlled by the host. Over the menstrual cycle, the host, the epithelium secretes various antimicrobial molecules at different times to have different effects on the microbiota. Also, the epithelia secrete glycogen, which is somehow broken down into sugars, and lactobacillus uses the sugars, does fermentation, and makes lactic acid. This acidifies the mucus, and that prevents a lot of other bacteria from growing. So all of this works together to give lactobacillus a competitive edge, and they make this lactic acid, which is a very potent antibacterial molecule. They can survive it, but most other bacteria can't. We expect the bacterial community to be dynamic, but it would track the antimicrobial molecules. Here's another example of specific defensins. So these are specific antimicrobial proteins secreted by the epithelium. And individual defensins are released at different times along the menstrual cycle. And that's a coordinated thing. We don't know the whole logic behind it. We don't know the effect they have on the bacteria. We don't know which bacteria are being targeted. All we know is the host is trying very hard to shape the microbiota. So I'm about to show you some data, really famous data from 4 healthy women who provided microbiota samples over a long period of time to let researchers study how stable the microbiota are. And so you're going to see a lot of colors, and those colors refer to different species they found. The most colors you're going to see are going to be red and this orange, and those refer to 2 different well-known lactic acid bacteria, Lactobacillus crispatus and Lactobacillus iners. So let's look. Oh, and you'll see red bars at the bottom. Those indicate when the women menstruated. So time in weeks. I think the women must have donated samples like twice a week or something like that, or 3 times a week for a long time. And again, these red bars are periods of menstruation. So what you're seeing each time is a stack of showing the relative abundance of the different strains. So it always adds up to 100%. So in this sample on the left, roughly 65% of the bacteria were the Lactobacillus crispatus, and then 5% were this green one, another 5% were this blue one, about 10% were this yellow one, and then another color. It's hard to know what these other colors refer to. You would have to read the article. But knowing how this is all laid out, we can now compare these 4 different healthy women and the temporal dynamics of their vaginal microbiota. This person typically was dominated by Lactobacillus crispatus, except during 3 of the menstruation periods, in which case whatever this green thing became more dominant, and here several bacteria became more dominant. This person was almost always completely dominated by Lactobacillus crispatus. This person had a very diverse microbiota that was not dominated by Lactobacillus crispatus. And this person had no predictable pattern except that between menstruations they were dominated by Lactobacillus iners. So what the researchers took away from this is that, again, we can't even predict what bacteria are going to be in a vaginal microbiota at any given time. We know which are most common, but this person's were very different from this person's. And so it's a big mystery that we have not yet solved. And that brings us to bacterial vaginosis. This is a well-known condition that is a state of dysbiosis, where the lactobacillus are replaced by other bacteria. They're temporarily outnumbered by anaerobes. And so during bacterial vaginosis, the vaginal microbiota lose a function, and they don't prevent pathogens from growing. So other things happen, like in some women when they're going through this, they have pain or a distinct fishy odor, but that doesn't always happen. And large numbers of women are having this condition at any given time. I think in the next slide we look at the reasons this is concerning is that those women are more susceptible to sexually transmitted infections when that's happening. And if they're pregnant, they're susceptible to preterm birth and other pregnancy complications. So it is a serious condition with significant complications. No one knows what causes it. So there are a lot of risk factors, and it can be spread sexually from woman to woman, but no one risk factor really determines whether someone's going to get it or not. There isn't a clear thing we can point to that predicts it. And a lot of the cases are asymptomatic. So a lot of the cases where you can determine from the gram stain that this is happening, there's no odor, there's no pain, there's no discharge, and so the woman wouldn't know anything was wrong. And there is no known cure for it. This is an active area of research right now, and we do hope we'll figure out what's going on sometime in the near future. That's enough for this set of slides. That's all I want you to know about the human microbiota. Thank you for your attention to this, and I'll see you sometime soon, I hope.